We're live. This is so exciting. LaLa Gardens is back and with a very special guest today, Mark Grignon. He's a very dear friend. He and his family stop by whenever they're coming down from Wisconsin. And the title of this particular live is Igniting the Trade Route. And I consider Marcus and his family to be, you know, of the first. So, welcome. And Mark, can you tell us a little bit about, well, actually, Marcus Grignon, I'm going to read it, is an enrolled member of the Menominee tribe of Wisconsin. His ancestors came from not just Menominee, but also France, Ireland, England, and Scotland. His professional career encompasses agriculture, public policy, tribal law, sustainable development, research, and small business development. And for the last decade, Marcus has worked to build a pan-American sustainability movement that stretches across the United States. He utilizes the history of trade routes to support his movement and uncover knowledge lost in time. So it's just so timely and such an honor to be introducing Mark. Hello.
Hey, what's going on, Tina? It's good to be here with you today, and it's good to be live from LaLa Gardens. Even though I'm not present, I know that LaLa is a special place in my heart always.
Well, I'm just thrilled because we've been talking trade route for a minute, and it's just something that I'm just so naturally drawn to because I went on trips with my dad. We traveled Highway 66. We got to stop off at all these little mom and pop places and really understand the bioregional aspect of culture and society. And that was part of my growing up, and I know how important it is. So the fact that you've got some experience and you just have this trade route as part of your vernacular, can you tell me a little bit about what trade route means to you?
Yeah, I would say, to me, it means really being able to chart your own path. But what's really beautiful about it, and something I've noticed over the years as I've gotten older, is the paths you always take are always ones that have been taken before. For instance, I think it really came prevalent to me when I was living in New Mexico, and I was working for the Santa Fe Food Policy Council at the time. I was an AmeriCorps member, but I would go to this place called Diablo Canyon, just right outside Santa Fe, and I would go hike. And I remember this one path. I went with some friends, up the side of the cliff there, and I did that whole thing because I was trying to conquer my fear of heights.
Nice.
Conquering two different fears while I was down there. One of them was heights. And so I climbed that thing, but when I stepped on one of those ledges, I looked down and kind of freaked me out a little bit because it was pretty high up. And then we got to this spot where it's just flat, it's grassy. You can go down further, and there's tunnels and stuff there, but I'm not much of a tunnel crawler. Pretty big. And I remember climbing back down, and I remembered the path, and I was like, okay, if I just go around the canyon again and go around it and go to the back of it, there's a little path. And so I always remembered that. So I'd go back to Diablo here and there. And one time I went there and I saw this rock, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. This is probably right near where the path is to go up to the top. And sure enough, there was the path. So there was some old, traditional path that was sitting there the whole time. And if you had the right kind of eyes, you could see it, And I think for me, that's really trade routes. I guess if we look at it in the 21st century, is really retaking the steps that others have taken and fulfilling, your visions or your dreams while you're on it. I think that's really what it comes down to. And I don't know. I think that's kind of how I've lived my life. I've kind of taken different trade routes, as you'd say, and kind of charted my own path. But I was really just following a path before. I think when we go we look at public policy, we look at my background, and I think public policy really came from my Uncle Bob. He just passed away this past year, and
Blessings.
yeah, and so I think for him, he went to Washington and he worked in the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and he did all these different things, very well known kind guy that could like help you get into Washington. So
Mm.
when I went, um, I actually ran into somebody that was like, "Your last name's Greeno? Do you know Bob Greeno that used to work for the BIA?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's my uncle." And like, so it was just how I look at that is like it's another trade route, trade route of indigenous people going to Washington and doing different things, trying to help or get lost.
That's an incredible story because you seem so natural to it, like when I learned of your activities and there's so much more to learn about what your experiences were in Washington D.C., but
Mhm,
it's just it seems like a shoe that fits for you and you
mhm.
yeah, that's beautiful that it was that it had that aspect of path in your family and your
Yeah,
that's amazing.
yeah, definitely, definitely. And so, I think going back to what we were talking about with the trade routes, it's like that's kind of how I see it. There's a lot of things that I think people see when it comes to these trade routes. Like the different paths that now like trains take, or they're now
Mm.
super highways where people are driving their cars. But I think in the process of development, people forget a lot of things.
Oh,
You know,
yes.
They forget a lot of the knowledge. They forget that you know the little towns that everybody went through on Route 69
Mhm.
and all the development and the prosperity that was tied to all that. And then once the big superhighways came, Highway 69 was just high
66.
66, 66. Um, I think that when I think of Route 69, I'm thinking like, was it like one of those casinos down in Santa Fe or
Oh, oh
Laguna?
my God, you're right. It's sort of like reckoning back to this
Yep.
past that we reminisce about, right? But
Hmm.
I mean, I see that this is the time and this is the opportunity when we actually get to you know, come down off our rock, right? And see that little sign because we were all taking a pause and we're all kind of looking around. We notice when the sky gets bluer, when things slow down. We notice what it is to slow down. And it
Hmm.
usually brings out the pathways, right? The birds start calling. Everything becomes much more about these natural, meandering ways of being together. And I just loved that you had this path of discovery when you were, finding that the path that you're. What's the canyon again where you were?
Diablo
Oh,
Canyon.
Diablo. Oh my
It's
goodness.
kind of it's like a dirt road right off of 599. It's like you get
Okay.
off of 599 and then you cruise up. I can't really explain the road that you turn on to get there, and then like
Yeah.
it's just like you just gotta like drive
You
and
gotta
like
find it.
re
You gotta
follow the
be
path.
there.
One time I got lost and went down the wrong path. I was showing some friends and we wound up like right next to the Rio Grande like river and everything. It was like the
I
wrong
love it
way.
when you can't find the path and you have to like you're like, "Oh, all right, I gotta do it again."
Yeah, yeah. But
What I also loved about your story was, and I wonder, how this, it just lends a little sort of the importance of markers, right? Because you came down and you noticed a rock first, right? And then the path was somehow adjacent or part of that pausing and that noticing. And there's a canyon that I go up occasionally, and it's not a frequented place. And but yet I found this little cabin at the end of the canyon, and it was abandoned, of course, and in rubble, but pretty much.
mhm,
But it was like while I was even the first time I discovered it, I remember like looking to my left and seeing this triangular rock that just seemed slightly off or slightly out of place or something. Like it was intentionally put there, right?
mhm,
And then, but that when I came back out of the canyon and I looked straight ahead and there was the rock. And I'm like, "Oh, it's a marker."
mhm.
So that, we're leaving these yeah, so and I feel like we have access to our past, just by giving it attention. So, yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you stumbled on, your discovery of trade route, further.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You have that document that
I
you were
do.
cool.
Let's start there.
So I guess what's really interesting is it kind of serendipitously occurred. Let's put it that way, in the sense that so a little bit of my background, like prior to I guess the situation I'm in now, is basically I've worked in hemp for a long time, and I wanted to um, see that there was. I was starting to see different connections about cannabis sativa. Let's put this out there first. Cannabis sativa, and it's showing up in different like artifacts in you know historical record, both for my tribe but other tribes around the Great Lake region, and in the New England territory. So I've seen the Iroquois had basically a burden strap made out of hemp. They had the Tuscarora. I've been known as the hemp. People of the hemp long hemp shirts. My people, the Algonquin, they had bowstrings that were made out of cannabis sativa, and all this stuff is in the Library of Congress, and that's where I found that document. It's a book, textile fibers of North America, specifically looking around the Eastern and Great Lake region, and that's where I first found that document. Now, if we look at a little bit deeper on the USDA and trying to see more information in the Leicester Dewey files at the National Agricultural Library in Beltsville, Maryland, their Special Collections Division. Within that records, they were talking about how the colonists around 1776 and before were working with tribes, and the tribes had hemp. So now, the biggest thing that is going on right now, I guess, in the hemp world is, and specifically historically, is that you have a separation. People say that tribes were working with dog bane, which is very true. I'm not going to delineate that. But the fact that all of these different historical records are talking about hemp, cannabis sativa, and there's a differentiation between that book and Library of Congress, is that there's cannabis sativa and there's dog bane, and it's recognized as that. And there are artifacts that are made out of that. But at the same time, there's cannabis sativa. Now, the biggest thing is we know hemp is not native to America. It wasn't. It wasn't. It didn't show up. It wasn't grown here the whole time. So it came here at some point. It probably came from Asia, because we have the best record of where it goes back further, and further in our past. It goes all the way back to Asia and Tibet and around that region. So for me, I'm kind of like, okay, well, there's two ways this could have happened. One, the tribes were trading with the colonists back in 1492, when hemp started, between 1492 and between that time frame, and the first documentation of it saying that native people had hemp is that period between 1492 to 76 and prior before that. So I think when it comes to that, it might have showed up in that time frame along the East Coast by the colonists, or it came from a trade route from the West Coast. And we know that hemp came into Chile around a certain time frame, and then there's also been a lot of tribes in California who trade in seed, and that's something I found. And then so that document that Tina brought up earlier, I decided to go into the U.S. Department of the Interior. There's a public library that you can go in there, but you got to go through security, and you got to go through all that crap. Like, you got to go through the Library of Congress and all that. So don't be bringing no knives or anything like that. Like, be smart about it. And you could go into the library, and in there you can search their databases. A long time ago, you could just search their databases and go into the back to the stacks and start looking around. There's a lot of magic that happens in those stacks. I can't tell you how many times in my career I've gone back into the stacks of the Department of Interior's public library and something just falls on my lap. This time it doesn't, because it's all robot generated. They have the little doorways that open, and you can't just get everything anymore. So,
oh my goodness.
so I went back there, and I started looking at obviously I was doing research on hemp, so I found everything that I could find on hemp in the Department of Interior. And then I also started looking at trade routes because I was like, okay, let's look at this whole thing of the West Coast and this whole trade route idea. And I stumbled on this document here was in there. And then there was another larger document, which is it's really hard to send by email because there's like 70 pages in it. But it
Yeah.
basically documents every tribe that was trading along the West Coast. Because I
Wow.
know that when I was in
Oh, it's
I
beautiful.
was at the Intertribal Agricultural Council annual meeting. It usually happens in Las Vegas around the same time as the rodeo that happens, the
Mm.
national rodeo.
Mhm.
And at the conference, I ran into a woman from Oregon who is native, and she's like, "My people have been using hemp for a long time. You know, we have historical uses for it. Like they don't let anybody tell you that, you know, we never used it and we never had a connection because we do." So
Mm.
I think that there has been some type of trading that's been going on because I think what happened
You
is,
think?
yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. And I
Let's
think what
just put it out there right now. Let's say definitely.
definitely, definitely. Well, you know me. And
Okay.
I think that the Chinese or some other Asian country, one of those folks from one of those countries came over by boat. And what I heard from what's really interesting is I brought this idea up to or I was mentioning the idea, and John Rulak, who started Nutiva, you know, he's a very eccentric individual, and he said to me, he goes, "Well, the Chinese, they had these huge boats, and they had these all these fish tanks in there, so like, you know, they could, you
Oh,
know,
of course.
eat and everything, and
Of
you know, do all that.
course.
But they traveled all over the world in them, and they lived on them, like, and you could live on
Of
them."
course.
And I was like, "Oh, that's pretty interesting, John." You know, so that's one theory I think is it came over on one of those big ass boats and it traded with one of the tribes. And there's specific tribes in this document from the Department of Interior that says that they traded in seed and seed
Oh,
only, or in, you know, seed and a few other things. So it gives you a list of all the tribes and what they traded at the time. So I found all this information and I found it really fascinating. And so, can you pull up one of the maps?
yeah, let's do that. Wow. I had no idea what we were going to be talking about today, other than trade route, and I am
Mhm.
so ecstatically happy
Oh no,
that we
I've
get
been
to do
saving this. I've been saving this for you, Tina.
this. It feels like yeah, I feel like I just
You're
got a present. Did we
well,
do it?
it's true because I've never done an interview on any of this documentation or this research. So this is actually some research that I've been working on for a while now, at least 4 years, I would say. So we look at this map here. And if you can see it, there's all these black lines, bolded black lines. These are all the trade routes that are coming along the west coast here. So you can kind of see. So I'll obviously let's go a little further down here to like Oregon and California. All these trade routes are making their ways into, you can see it, the Great Lakes. So if that theory is true, then the hemp seed probably traveled through some of these trade routes through here and made contact in the Great Lakes region. And that's where, you know, it would have came from. Also, it could have came from the colonists on the East Coast as well. But I'd rather put theory on this more just because it's got that indigenous print to it. Colonists get a lot of credit for a lot of things: Constitution, Declaration of Independence, the United States itself. Give the indigenous people the trade routes because there was tons of them. And what's really interesting, and this is something I learned from my cousin Jeff Greeno. If anybody ever gets a chance, they should look him up. Jeff Greeno, amazing Menominee landscape ecologist is the best way I could put it as. And what he told me is that there was a trade route that would hit like up near Duluth, near Lake Superior, and then down near Chicago. There are two different trade routes. And then you would cross it through the state of Wisconsin and it would go through my people's territory, the Menominee. And so that's that's where, you have two big trade routes that are funneling in, like as we were seeing earlier on the map, all the way down from, Canada and then all the way through California. And that just kind of, you know, it just shows you that at some point they dropped down there. And then when they dropped down there, they were coming through Menominee territory. And I think that's where that Algonquin bowstring that was documented in that book in the Library of Congress um, has, like where it came from. That's my theory, anyways. Um, the Menominee, they do have a word for hemp. It's called sadnop, but I know that when I speak about that to the elders, like you have a lot of elders that grew up around the era of reefer madness and just say no and
Mhm.
all that stuff. So like, hemp or cannabis is not it's not friendly to a lot of elders. But I know a lot of the elders say that, it's dog bane. And I'm kind of,
Mm.
yeah, you say that, but like, there's had to been some Menominee that, had some connection to hemp, cannabis sativa.
Oh, yeah, and when are you gonna tell what you have when it's been a secret your whole life and something that you get in trouble for, right? So
Exactly.
we know what it's like to have, I think we, can relate to the feeling of what happens when you're repressed, at least on from the cannabis point of view. So
Definitely. Definitely.
hard to not see that one.
So,
Yeah.
so kind of follow up on this whole thing. So what's really interesting, and we go back to the whole thing, is I know that um, there's only like a couple artifacts in the United States, artifacts, whether it be museums or wherever else that they're stored. There's only a couple of them of hemp. What's really interesting is that I actually took a trip to the Museum of Natural History in New York City, and while I was there, I wanted to look through like the whole archives. I was specifically looking for one thing, and this is some of the work I was doing underneath, my role of running Hempstead Project Heart is I
Mm.
wanted to see the documentation, the archival artifact of this bowstring that was made out of hemp. And
Mhm.
so I went out there and I actually went there with my brother who was, he's like the vice, at one point he was the vice chairman of Language and Culture Commission. He's not currently the vice chairman, but he still sits on the board. And we went in there and I wanted him because I knew that like he comes from like a cultural official position within my tribe. And I didn't want like the Museum of Natural History to say that no, we can't show you that or whatever. Like,
Mhm.
I wanted to have someone like official with me. So I
Yeah.
brought him along and we started looking for the archival material. And like they were bringing stuff out. And then they came out and they said, well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but the bowstring that was documented can't be found. It's not here. And I was like, are you kidding
Oh.
me? Where, well, where'd it go? He's like, well, I have no idea. Like, it's been documented in that book that you have, Mr. Guido, but it's
Right?
currently not here. And this has happened a lot to me in my research. I had another document.
Uh-huh.
Another little story here to go tie it back to Washington since we're talking about everything. Uh,
Yeah, exactly.
I requested a document in 2016 called The Economics of Hemp, and it was written by F. Eliot in 1942, I believe.
Okay.
And it's like about 50 pages. And when you go to the National Agricultural Library in Beltsville, Maryland, you go to the Special Collections Division, you're only allowed to be in there from 8 a.m. until noon. Then there's a lunch
Mhm.
break for 1 hour, and then you're back in there from 1 to 4 o'clock. So you don't really have a lot of time to dig through things. So my first time there, I found this document, and I'm like, oh, this is amazing. I'm going to ask for a reproduction copy. Um, they wouldn't give me that copy. They said that
Okay.
there was a specialist that was in there reviewing it, and it was under administrative review. And I was like, well, wait a minute, like, but you showed it to me. And they're like, yeah, we actually weren't supposed to show that to you. And I was like, what? And what I learned about this document when I had it in my hands, unfortunately, this is one of those times where I was like, "Damn it, I wish I had an iPhone." Because at the time I had a flip phone. I didn't really, wasn't big on the smartphone thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Damn it, I wish I had a flip phone," because that document was there, and it was a large document, and what it said in there is, fo 3/4 of the United States is arable to grow hemp. It's suitable to grow hemp. I
Mhm.
don't know where the 1/4 of the United States cannot grow hemp, but that document tells you, and there's some more information there on the economics of it
Mm.
that can't be found. So, when I was still a part of the Earth Island Institute, as when Hempstead Project Heart was still a part of the Earth Island Institute, we actually broke away from them this
Mm.
past year. But we had a lawyer put in a FOIA request, a Freedom of Information Act request, to retrieve the economics of hemp that I requested.
Mhm.
And the USDA basically told me that it was sent to Homeland Security for classification when the Trump administration took over, and
Interesting.
it was never returned. So
Oh.
yeah. So it was under administrative review during the Obama administration, and then it went to Homeland Security during the Trump administration, and it was never returned. And basically, after trying to dig and figure out what happened, the lawyer I was working with told me the person at Homeland Security told me that it was either lost or it's been destroyed.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah,
That's wholesale something we probably
yeah.
shouldn't
So
say.
like we look at it, we got this is now my brothers. I don't know. I have two older brothers, and they love to call me conspiracy brother because I don't know if anybody who's joined us live here has ever seen Undercover Brother
I
with
love that
it's
movie.
so good. But Dave Chappelle is like conspiracy brother. So my brothers call me conspiracy brother because I always have all these conspiracies. But it's funny because you have this young native researcher that is trying to do good work for the world. And he stumbles upon these interesting documents from time to time, and either they somehow get lost or destroyed by the government, or somebody like slips in like a ninja in the middle of the night and steals a bowstring that's tied to my people of like related to cannabis sativa, made from cannabis sativa, and it's like,
Oh my
what
goodness.
the hell, man? Like I can't catch a break. Either I can't catch a break or is a coincidence. I don't know
Or
what.
is it going in the path
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
is this part
yeah,
of the trade route where we're talking about the cosmic, trade route at this point in
definitely,
time when like
definitely.
more and more of I'm sure it's true of you, obviously, like like more our lives are beginning to make sense because of the things that because of the fact that we've followed the path of our hearts, right? And
Hmm.
it's and we've been consistent about doing it, and we're getting to a point where we're actually starting to find each other, on a bigger scale, and this is part of the fun of what's going on now. Like we get to create the trade route again through these interactions and these relationships, and I'm so honored to know you and to have the gift of your sharing today.
Of course, of course. Yeah. I mean, I don't think I've ever really spoken a lot of this stuff like ever live on like
No.
platforms. But it's like year
Oh, I feel
2022. I
honored.
don't know what else, like might as well just come clean. Like
Oh, this is the time for that. It's funny, we were having that conversation earlier. It's kinda like, this is the time for that. So I'm really
yeah,
honored that you're here, Marcus,
definitely.
sharing this profound truth and understanding that there's so much more diversity to our world, that in a time when we're against each other or duality focused, that what you're sharing today just opens up this bright past
Hmm.
that is almost like our future, because
Hmm.
we get to
Hmm.
honor what's happened before and the paths that have happened before.
Definitely. Definitely. I think, like kind of I when you brought up in my bio about me building a pan-Indian sustainability movement, that was actually a concept I thought of and really dive deep into. I'd say when I was about 20 years old, and it was something that I was like, that's what the world really needs. Is like movement building. That's kind of how I got into movement building, and I think like when it came to looking at trade routes, but also building like relationships with other tribes, like it's pretty crazy. Like I was in a room full of people and I was speaking those words, like, going back to my community to create and launch a pan-Indian sustainability movement that would create economic development, revitalize culture and language, and bring nutrition back to the public school system, and, ending diabetes has plagued my people. It's like, man, I can't tell you, like, when that happened, what was that, like August of 2009, like, and in that room full of all those people, it's like, wow, like, since then, and we look flash forward now, I'm, 33 years old now, and it's like 13 years of a lot of work and seeing the progress that's been made and the tribes and the people that I've met. It's pretty cool. I mentioned it to a friend who was actually in that room and heard that whole story live. I told her, I was like, yeah, I have building that movement still. Like it stretches across 4 states now, and it's growing more and more by the day. You just kind of gotta stick to it, really, and more than anything, and it's amazing. So
When
yeah.
was that? When did you give that? When did you share that? What was the event?
So so when I got my big break going to Washington, I basically got this amazing scholarship. It was through the AT&T Foundation. It was to basically go to George Washington University, to their School of Political Management, and I would learn basically how to run a campaign, how to run a lobbying campaign, how to shift public opinion on matters, and work anywhere I wanted to in Washington. I wanted to I wanted to work for Normal, and my brother told me you're a fucking idiot. Don't even do that. And I was like, why do you say that? He's like, because you have an email here that says you can work in any congressional office on the Senate side. You better take that opportunity. And so I listened to him and I did it, and I ended up working for Debbie Stabenow. Um, so I worked there for about five months, longest intern that survived all of that.
Wow.
And so it was the first 100 days of Obama. And
Wow.
after I finished my semester there, I applied for this thing called the Center for Progressive Leadership. And it was basically like this nonprofit in the city of Washington, D.C. that was strategically placing interns, or, workers who are coming from college in the city in progressive organizations. And so I was chosen I was the only Native person out of everybody. But I mean, I was with Muslims, I was with, LGBTQ community, I was with African Americans, I was with Chicanos, I was with Chicanas, like I was with everybody, every nationality was represented there. Every, progressive movement was represented there as well, because everybody had a background, everybody came with some type of organizing.
Wow.
And
Powerful.
I got placed in the environmental community,
Wow.
and that's when that's when we were working for the American Clean Energy Security Act. So I left the Senate side, where I was working on carbon trading, which I think is a fucking joke.
Oh, it is.
Um,
Yeah, we can
and then
go
I
super
go,
deep on that one. Let's do
yeah,
that
yeah,
sometime.
and then I go into the environmental community, and I'm pushing for a piece of legislation that allows carbon trading, but at the same time, like, opens our door to a whole other things too. I was actually able to actually get language inserted into amendment to that legislation. I didn't. Well, how should I put it? It wasn't really like, it wasn't my intent. It just
Mhm.
kind of happened where I ran into a lawmaker who was my lawmaker from my district, and I told him like what I was doing, that I needed help for tribal renewable energy projects, and sure enough, he stuck it in there. And the only
Amazing.
reason I know that, because the bill is, I mean, I've read the bill, it's 1,700 pages long, but the only reason I know that is because the environmental community got an opportunity to go sit in the House galleries before the vote, and we saw John Boehner, who was the minority leader at the time, um, just criticize it. Well, I mean, the Democrats like submitted this 300-page amendment like maybe 2 hours before the vote. So I gotta give him like, I see where he's coming from. That's
Right,
that's some, that's
right,
some
yeah.
bullshit. That's some bullshit. But he's flipping, he's like criticizing everything. We're sitting there for an hour, and then he gets to the last page and he goes, "Travel renewable energy. There's not even a dollar sign here, Mr. Chairman. This is absurd. We should not be passing this legislation because of all the stuff that they're ramming through at the last minute." And I'm just sitting in there in the House galleries, and I'm like, "Holy shit! Did that really just happen?" So I did all
Oh,
this work, and then we got the bill passed. It passed 219 to 212, and
wow.
it was amazing because, I think about like the current events that happen now. I'm not really going to speak too much on it, but I just think
Right.
that you know when we were trying to push just for climate change legislation, like we were sitting out front of the congressional offices, and the Capitol Police were ready to fucking arrest us.
Mm,
Like they didn't give a shit, you know. We
mm,
were peaceful, and we were
mm,
holding signs, but
mm.
because we were not maintaining emotion, like walking and holding our signs, they
Wow.
were going to arrest us, and so we had to go inside. And plus, like it was like middle of June in Washington D.C. It's a goddamn swamp, so it's really hot out there. So we moved a lot of our numbers, young people. There were at least 40 young people, and then a bunch of old timers, the elders there,
Wow.
and we got like funneled into the Longworth tunnels, because there are all these tunnels that are underneath Capitol Hill that go to the Senate side, they go to the Library of Congress, they go to the fucking Supreme Court, and then they go over to the House side to all the House offices.
Wow.
And so I still remember all that stuff because at the time I'm like, oh, I just fresh out of Capitol Hill, so I remember all of everything. So we're sitting in the tunnels, we're looking around, and everyone's all like, "What are we supposed to do?" And I'm like looking around, I'm like, well, "Where the hell are my superiors? I can't find them." And I'm like, "All right, everybody, anybody that sees a little button right here, you basically like, and it has like a member of a congressional emblem on it. Those
Mhm.
are members of Congress. You're gonna want to talk to them.
Mm.
Anybody else that's wearing a suit, you don't want to do that."
Yeah.
And so I kind of just started whipping everybody to do something. And
Yeah.
then, I see my lawmaker and I chase after him, and it was amazing just seeing everything, like, and that's really why it tilted 219 to 212.
Mm.
Soon later we started to hear that like members of Congress were crossing the street. They weren't coming down because they knew that they were getting bombarded by us.
Interesting.
And so yeah, and that's how we're
You
like, all right,
drove them out of the tunnels
drove them out of the tunnels into the heat, and then
into the heat of light of
then we
day.
rolled over to the House galleries, and that's how that whole thing happened. But
Oh, what
that's
an
that's
adventure.
that was my that's my claim to fame when I worked for the environmental community. After we passed that vote, because everybody in the environmental community didn't give a shit about that piece of legislation because it was a horrible bill, which
Yeah,
it was.
right.
But I think the Senate would have hopefully done better. But
Mm.
basically, the environmental community just curtailed back. Like did their whole fundraising thing. The nonprofit industrial complex. I got to see it on full display while I was there, and I got
Oh, wow.
disenchanted by it.
Oh, yeah.
Rest of the summer, I just didn't give a shit really. I went to like farmers markets and promoted, but I was just like, man, dude, you got this legislation sitting there and you're not going to do nothing about it.
Mm.
Major letdown. So
Yes, which
we
is
come to
why we have to come together with people that we
exactly,
love and
exactly,
know and,
exactly.
do something new with our
Yeah,
lives.
yeah. So that's where that I guess where that story and where that those words of building a pan Indian sustainability movement came from, is because I was disenchanted by what happened in the environmental community in 2009,
Yes.
and I decided to launch something that would carry me forward for much other
So
places.
so how is that manifesting in this interesting time we're in? Are you, how are you finding the pathway? Is it being traveled well? Are we
Yeah, I think what really comes to it is you know um, this pathway that so like we go back to the trade route idea and the whole history of it. So my tribe, the Menominee, the state of Wisconsin, if you go on like Google Earth and you look at the state of Wisconsin, there's like this funny looking rectangle that's sitting in the middle of the state. It's all green. That's where I'm from.
Mm,
So that trade route that hit Chicago and went up to Duluth, it
Mm.
crossed through that nice little green space that we're in. And so for me, like my trade route is like I travel up towards like upper, upper Minnesota, northern Minnesota. So that's my whole thing is like I'm building kind of like a hemp trade route with the tribes up there. And then,
Beautiful.
going in the other direction, like hitting tribes in Michigan and upper Michigan. So really it's trying to like build like a small little trade route here in the Great Lakes region and just
Yeah,
kind
that's
of,
amazing.
spreading it out further from that. And I get, I get sometimes I just get like random, emails, phone calls, LinkedIn messages from tribal people, and they're like, "Hey, I really love what you're doing," and that's
Mm.
kind of how it starts, and then
Yeah.
a new trade route is created.
Exactly, and it's
Yeah,
kinda like hub-like, 'cause that person
yeah,
is now ignited to do the work in their region.
yeah,
Somebody hears about it or meets them somehow in a
yep,
travel, and then
yep,
and then it kind of just really operates that way.
definitely.
That's a natural it's such a natural system, I feel like part of the I have to plug my computer in so we
No
don't
worries.
lose each other. Um yeah, I just think that's one of the most powerful things is it's a natural system somehow, and because it's indigenous and because this is the way we're used to trading with each other as a people. If we're going to just look at ourselves as a human people, like
Mm-hmm.
it isn't far from our DNA.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah. Did you want to take a look at some of the other maps? Should we bring something else
Sure.
up?
Sure. Throw
Okay.
another one up.
Okay. This is so fun. I'm learning so much.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Yeah.
this.
No problem.
Share. Okay, stop screen. All right. Let's see. Did we look at this one yet?
No, we haven't. This is an
Okay.
interesting one. I really like kind of how these were created. They're just very simple and they just kind of show you. And what's really cool is this one shows you like where you're going and you can actually see some of the old like some of the old routes are now currently now created into highways. So look at right here. There's um Kinniks, like if you see Nebraska, there's Ugalala and North Platte. That's I-80. And then, it kind of goes further up. And then there's down, look at that must be the Oregon Trail that they're talking about right there. And then if you look down here, there's a smaller one that brings you to Denver. I think that's 76. So like it's really cool because I ever since I've seen these maps, it's kind of imprinted in my head whenever I travel. I hate flying. I don't really like traveling by plane unless I have to go to California because driving a car to California is just too long. But I travel by car, and so when I travel from Wisconsin down into Nebraska and Iowa, I'm actually retracing that old trade route. I think that's just super cool. But yeah, I don't know. I just really love these maps. I think that's what drew me the most to this document when I found it at the Department of the Interior. Is just amazing looking maps and just old and still has like the towns that are currently still here today. So you can actually like make it applicable today, or even like some people when they look at it like maybe there's like these old towns that aren't there anymore. Actually, it's not like Denver, Ogallala, North Platte. Let's see where else. Trying to see if there's something a little further up. Boise, Idaho. Um, hmm, I think Casper is still a town too in Wyoming. But yeah, it's amazing. I think this whole trade route concept that you've talked about for a while, Tina, it's always really piqued my interest. So when you asked me to come and speak to you today on this little salon discussion, I was like, of course, we're gonna talk about trade routes. I got something for you. I got something in my archives for you, girl. And you know me, I
Oh
love
my
I love talking. So
god. Oh my god, and I love talking to you, and I love
oh
your
man,
family so much. We have so much fun when we get together.
yeah,
And we have done quite a lot of driving. Like, yeah, we've hit some hemp spots in Colorado
Oh
and
yeah. Oh yeah.
did some
Definitely.
done some traveling. Hit the hot springs a
I
couple
definitely
times.
I definitely will admit, anybody that ever takes a ride with Tina, just know that you're gonna see everything that you wanna see, even if you don't wanna see it.
Right?
But what's funny is, like, I wasn't down to, like so what happened was is, like, we were what was it? Tina picked me and a buddy up, and, she had a new roommate with her, and we were cruising over to Colbrand, Colorado for a big, like, hemp event, and we, like, camped out and, did the whole thing, like, it was a lot of fun, and then, after the event was over, Tina was like, "Hey, you guys, you wanna go to Buena Vista?" And we're like, "Yeah, sure," but then we went, like, the long way, like, all the way down to Gunnison, shoot up over to 285, and then shoot up 285 to Buena Vista, and it was like, oh my god. I mean,
And
I will never, not go on a trip through Colorado. I love going through Colorado, but it was a long ride. It was a long ride. I know that ride. It's a long ride, but it was fun. I think we bought, like, some peaches and Palisade and, like, just we did the, tourist thing, and then we got to this amazing, like it was like a hotel, like, hotel, motel, hot spring/campground place. Oh my god, it was so cool. And what's even funnier is, like, we go back to the, like, maps and trade routes. I actually gave, a family friend, his parents, like, this, like, road atlas. I gave it to him for Christmas, and, like, I actually, like, drew some of, like, outlined some of the roads and highways I've taken in 285, and, like, I put in Buena Vista, I put Hot Springs Hotel, must go. So, just to let you know, Tina, I actually spread the knowledge. I can't remember if, like, you were telling me, like, they were, like, close to shutting down or something, but, like, oh man,
they're
it was such a
always on
beautiful
the
place.
edge, man. They need our support, and
Oh
it's
man,
such a
it's a beautiful place.
such a
Oh,
beautiful spot.
so
Yeah.
yeah, we definitely have gone our definitely have done our road trip in Tina.
It's true, it's true. Was that the same trip where on the way back, there was this huge thunderstorm, and then I'm like, "Bring it!" And you're when
Yeah,
it
and we
did,
were we
it,
were
like,
we were
followed us home, and we were
we
like
were traveling, like, I think it was past Longmont or almost the Longmont, and we had to pull over because it was raining so hard, and then we stopped in that tea house in Boulder and, like, yeah,
Oh!
just yeah, yeah,
Oh, that tea yes. Oh my
yeah.
goodness. I am a good oh my goodness, I forgot some of the details. Thank you.
Of course, of
Oh, what a
course.
blast. You
Oh,
guys
man.
yeah. We should take a trip like sometime, like yeah, when you and, the kids are grown up a little bit, and I find me a man I love. Let's take a couple's journey on a trade route
Okay.
together as a
I'm
family.
cool. I'm down with
Okay.
that. I'm totally
Okay,
down with
cool.
that.
Getting a little personal here on a live.
Oh, that's all good. That's all
I
good.
love it.
That's all good.
Should we take a look at another map?
Sure.
Okay. I love these maps.
Show the one map I sent you, because that one's really cool because it goes further south.
Okay. Um, I'm not completely is it this one?
Let's see here. Uh,
Is it that
I don't
one?
think so. It might be
Okay,
another. It
hold on.
might be a different one. It's
Okay.
just one doc, I think I sent you.
I know will have to get better at this,
That's all good.
sharing. Window. So that one I did, that one I did, I think. Oh, maybe it's this one. It's that one.
Mm-mm.
No.
Nope, that's from that book.
Shoot.
Dang.
Oh, I think maybe I know. Hold on. Remove. Let's see. I've got. I did that one. I only have 3 up here. Oh wait, let me see. Sorry.
No worries.
We're good, everybody. Dun 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 dun. Maybe it's this one.
Let's see here.
Oh, dang it. I might have to. That's the wrong. Hold on. Title page wrap. I want to get it. I guess there's only one way to do this. Patiently and one at a time. Oh, maybe this is it. Oh, I think this might be it. Okay.
It was the one you had to turn because it was all like.
Okay. And it's not this one, huh?
Well, maybe it is the right one. Hold on a second here.
Let me keep looking. Title page. Next time I'll not do this. Let's see. It's got to be this one. No? Oh, edit. View. Go tools. Rotate.
It's the old Spanish Trail, Santa Fe to
Oh,
Los Angeles.
okay. I got it. Rotate left. Okay. We're there. Let me get back to you and me.
Okay.
And then I will get rid of that one. We have someone live. We're almost there, y'all. Stay with us.
Stay with us.
Stay with us. Share screen window. Okay, I think it's this one.
Boom, that's it.
Boom.
So look at that. It's pretty interesting. It was a big map too, because it was just in a book, and so like you actually had to flip it open to kind of actually extend the rest of the side out into California. But you can kind of see here it's the old Spanish Trail, and it's just kind of showing you all the different routes. So you like kind of hop up into Colorado, go into Utah, and then kind of travel down through Nevada right into California to Los Angeles. That's pretty cool. I think what I really like about when I go archiving and looking through the archives, I love these old books that just kind of like have pop out stuff, things you don't see anymore. I think it's just really amazing. Sometimes it's just like it's all hand drawn too, or like it's done really delicately. Like yeah, I think that's another really cool thing is like these old maps showing all these trade routes is just to me, I found it really interesting, really intriguing, and it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier of just like we're literally walking the old paths, the old trade routes, whether it be on a highway, on an Amtrak train, like anywhere. I mean, it's amazing. Or even just hiking. That beautiful story I was talking about in Diablo Canyon outside Santa Fe. It's just, man, I really like it. I've learned to really appreciate like historical perspectives.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And
So,
yeah, and it's kind of like, I mean, if you look at it from, we're really entering a time when we're not going to be able to forget about our history because we don't have the luxury of excess anymore. Our ecological systems aren't going to sustain it, and they're showing us that, So it's kind of a beautiful gift and to understand that much of what we assume today about the future is actually editable, and we can rewrite and we can reimagine, and to actually do the work of like slowing down and going hand to hand and creating economy around, and like Marcus brings down this maple syrup, when he comes down through Colorado. So he's bringing to Colorado on his hand-to-hand journey something that is expressing the ecology where he is, and the beautiful art and the craft and the work that goes into extracting the sap from these trees. And when you have that kind of a rich, I mean, I still have crystals from the maple syrup that
Mm.
that I save for a really special occasion because I just can't bear to see it go, like,
Yeah, I know, I
and
know.
that kind of quality, like, that's what we all yearn for. And so why not? Like, I'm so happy that you have this resource that you're sharing, because this is the future for
Mhm.
the way I look at it.
Definitely, definitely, definitely. No, I totally agree. Yeah, I think, it's good that you brought up the maple syrup because we're right around the corner from now is maple sugar season, so it's gonna be really I hope it's gonna be a really good year. It's been really cold, and that's what we
Mm,
really need, and then we need a
mm.
lot of snow, and that's what really produces a good season, so
Nice.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I'd love to come up and I don't know if I'd love to come up and do that with you and just kind of
yeah,
be
come
witness to that process.
yeah, come check it out, yeah.
Which is
Usually
another fun thing, right? If we get on these trade routes, we get to go and learn from one another. Like,
yeah,
there must have been a lot of that going on, that kind of, it wasn't just about coming and conquering. I think at some point it was people coming, like those living ships that you were describing. Can you imagine that exchange? Must have been such a beautiful thing for people to be able to walk onto something floating, see a jungle, and then I don't know, just the level of exchange is
yeah,
beautiful. And
yeah, totally, totally.
mm. So are you going to have any hemp projects coming up that you would like to share?
I am well, first I gotta figure out my land situation this summer.
Mm.
I think that the property that I have been growing on for the past 2 years is gonna probably get turned over to, like, the bigger farm that I work with a tribe.
Mm.
So, I'm sad to see that one go because like, it was, like, an area where, like, the sunset was always so beautiful, but it also, like, happened, like, later on in the evening, so when, like, it's dark in the city, it's still really bright out there, and, man, I really love that area, it's really beautiful, but,
Mm.
I got a bunch of, like, industrial farmers around me, it's not really
Mm. Mm.
optimum location. I'm really gonna miss all the, like, the earthworms I've been taking care of, while I've been out
Oh,
there.
goodness.
Yeah, yeah, I saw a lot of them when I was pulling my hemp this fall, like, they're all just kinda moving around, getting out of the way, like, I was literally, like, pulling all my hemp by hand because I had just a small little crop this year, so I was like, "Well, I'm pulling this stuff by hand and keeping the roots too, because
Yes.
like, fuck that, I like, not waste it." That's something that,
No.
Alex Whiteplume told me,
Mm.
he's an uncle to me, I would say, he's a Ugalala farmer, and he's like, "Nephew, you gotta remember that, you wanna get the root system too, 'cause that's a lot of value in there as well," and I was like, "I know,
Mhm.
I know." So,
Did he have anything specific to say about it? Because I know it's really like the tea is really good for arthritis. My brother heard this from
okay.
some Hispanic people in Albuquerque, who noticed that he was growing over the fence, and then they came and they asked for the stems and the roots,
Oh, nice, nice.
and for their arthritis, they said. So I'm
Yeah,
curious.
so, I know of this group in Kentucky called Kentucky Hemp Works, and
Uh-huh.
her name's Katie Moyer, and she's created
Mm.
a salve with it, and I think if I remember correctly, she uses it for, like, anti-aging properties,
Oh,
or, like
gorgeous.
yeah, yeah, so
Okay.
that's,
And
like,
she
another
uses the root quite a bit.
yeah, yeah, like, she's created her own value-added product, and I think
Mm.
she's been developing it since, like, 2015, so,
Yeah,
it's one of those
yeah,
things like, "Dang." So,
legit.
yeah, yeah, legit.
My goodness. Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, there's so many pieces to this, right? Because
Mhm.
you're describing things and, the directories of each other and the way we can, bring in boutique businesses as part of the people that we support. So the shout
Mhm.
outs and the ways that we make all of this visible, I think, is going to be all the fun that we get to have
Definitely,
doing this work. So
definitely.
how is you? So I had no idea you were so involved in movement building.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't, how should I say it? I don't promote it because
Yeah.
I don't really wanna have an ego involved because I think I
Mm.
learned that a lot when I was in Washington is there's a lot of ego just all around everything, public
Yeah.
policy, everything, politics. There's a difference between public policy and politics. But, I mean, I think I see it a lot just displayed, whenever discussions of, power and policy come into play, just in
Mm.
my own, like, career, there's moments where it's like, you talk about policy or you talk about a certain change in policy or how a strategy should go in terms of interacting with the government and people who actually have a background in that are kind of like, ah, and I'm just a very soft-spoken person, so it's kind of like, um, I don't know if it's like they don't see me as like inexperienced or not as expert T as they are, but man, I've gone to the best schools in America and studied this stuff, and I've been in those situations and working
Yeah.
in government, both legislative, executive. I've never gone to the judicial side because I don't know, that doesn't fascinate me. But I think
Mhm.
that in my experience and in my career, I've noticed that I know a lot.
Mhm.
I don't lead on as like I know everything because you don't want to be an asshole. Come on, like.
Right, but at some point, we get to put our knowledge to use, and
Hmm.
I've been in my own sort of interesting situation, as you are very well aware, of being the strata of folk that can't afford where they're living.
Yep.
And so rather than pick up and go, I believe that these garden spaces that we're creating that are their own networks and their own trade routes.
Definitely.
The the fact that you're allowing nature succession, she sets up her networks and it's the way she promotes vitality and health to a garden space. And every time we disrupt that, we basically take it back to a chaotic, bacterial dominant environment where we then have to begin the work again to find each other so that we can resonate at the same vibrational rate and create
Hmm.
the membranes by which we can do these trades, right? Because I do see
Hmm.
the trade route as a type of a network that has a membrane function of like protecting the hubs, right? Like you
Yeah.
can't, if we take the trade route back to hand or foot to face, like that means that we get to know each other and
Hmm.
and that's part of the protection, right? And we know
Yeah.
each other over time and through families and through trade and through the seeds that we grow that we get from each other. And
Yeah.
that's the stuff of it. And
Hmm.
mm, yeah, so within my own searching for the solution rather than having to leave, I've stumbled on other movement builders, other and become one myself. We're in
Hmm.
the midst of a great movement of movements.
Definitely.
And in that movement, I've identified, and I wanted to get your feedback on this, and Kiril brought this up first, is that the garden is actually the governance aspect of a natural system, that it can act that way. And so, when we're talking about politics and ego and all that stuff, if we're basically taking it down to the simplest definition of that, and the most sort of like ecologically sound, I don't see why we can't do that in our gardens.
Hmm. Hmm. Definitely. Definitely. I think when you first said governance, it
Mm.
sparked this idea in my head, and it goes back to my my relative, Jeff Greeno, great Menominee landscape ecologist. He talks about what the old ones used to say, where it was like you have these elder plants that are in certain areas of the forest, and they take care of everybody else. So if it was the biggest one there is the trees, and then the trees kind of great, you know, um, take care of all the other ones that are beneath it that are smaller. And I think that's really important, and I think it really spoke to me a lot. And we go back to this beautiful state that you and I both are connected to, New Mexico, is that when the OSHA plant is growing, it's usually growing around aspen trees. And something that I've noticed, being a harvester of OSHA root only once, it was amazing. I'll never forget it. But the OSHA root is actually wrapped around the rootstock of these aspen trees. I think that's really beautiful. I think
That
that's
is really
amazing.
beautiful.
So I don't know what's going on underneath, but there must be some type of healing that's going on with both plants. So when we go back to this whole idea of the elder plant, and then the young plants, like I think that's important too. So if we look at the garden and we look at governance structure, like
Yeah.
those bigger plants are usually kind of watching out after all the other plants, and that's something you probably should observe this summer when you're out there again. Is like just kind of see who's kind of taking charge and taking care of everybody too at the same time.
Yeah, it's interesting, and yeah, and there's just so many interesting things to observe. Like I've learned everything I know about any natural system or any cryptocurrency or the blockchain or any of the things that I'm exploring right now, and some of the societal, cultural, you know, elegant, complex but elegant ways that we can step back into our natural levels of governance and economy and culture, right? Like
Hmm.
it doesn't have to be about winning any argument or fight. It really has to do with just observing the garden. Like
Hmm.
it's really that simple. I learned everything from just observing
Yep.
in the garden.
Definitely. Definitely.
She tells us everything we need to know and puts us in right relationships so that we're not like vying weirdly with each other because we're just simply unconnected to our living spaces.
Hmm. Definitely.
It's so simple.
Definitely.
Oh my goodness. Well, I can't wait to get some more maple syrup on this next season because I am down to crystals. What would you
So
like from Lala?
I don't know. We'll figure something out. We always do. I think that let's see here. Usually when the season starts for tapping the trees is
Mm,
usually when the crows come back, or um, the first fog of the year. That's usually one of those
wow.
things. There's a couple other signs too, but like from Menominee perspective, that's usually when it happens. So like sometimes that happens towards the end of February, sometimes that happens in March. One time we had winter
Okay.
all the way up through March, and we weren't tapping trees till April. That was really weird. So yeah, you
Interesting.
never know when it comes to climate change.
I know, right? And that puts
Yeah.
my travel plans pretty quick. So I better
Yeah.
get on this whole, governance and economy thing together with everyone else holding. I don't know. This is so beautiful, those maps. Anyway, yeah, I'm going to study them. I
Definitely,
want to travel them.
definitely. I think you'll pick up a lot of things along the way if you're willing to accept the things that are coming to you. And I think that's where you got to be in that mindset. Yeah,
Yeah, and celebrate the process. Yeah, the path
exactly.
you're on.
Definitely, definitely.
Well, it's a pleasure speaking with you, Marcus.
Always,
And
always, always.
I don't think it should be the last one. I think it should be one of many. And
Yeah, yeah.
oh,
We can
good.
talk about something else another time too. But yeah,
Okay.
I thought that would be the perfect start to start everything off, is talking
It's
about historical perspectives.
Yes, and also just really bringing it home that this hemp trade has been an indigenous occurrence for so much deeper of a history than we are aware, and that becomes, a place for discovery and acknowledgement and witness, right?
Definitely, definitely. Cool, cool,
Cool.
cool, cool.
All right, everyone. We're gonna say, are we ready to say goodbye? Is there anything else you'd like to say? Are we finishing up? I guess it feels
I
like
think
it
I think
maybe.
we're I think we're good. Yeah, yeah. It's
All
good.
right.
It's always good talking with you. Bye,
Yes.
everybody.
Bye, everyone. Bye.